What's happening, code builders? How you guys doing today? If you are watching us live or on the replay, you know what to do. Drop a link, drop a comment below with hashtag cult as we normally do. My Facebook is being a little bit wonky because, as many of you know, I've been locked out of my account for the past little bit. So we'll see if everything shows up properly with the connections. But it does look to me like on the side, the comments are showing up. So it looks like we are good. Now, for those of you who are tuning in, if you haven't already given permission for Restream to be able to see your name, then go to the link. You'll see, in the caption down there, there's a little link. If somebody can type that out in the comments for everybody and make everyone's lives easier, it is chat.restream.io/FB. If you click on that, you'll be able to give permission so that your name can show in the comments on the side here, just like Heather. Heather, thank you for tuning in. Everybody else who's commenting, I appreciate you coming and joining us live. Again, drop that comment with hashtag cult. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. I am here from Toronto, Ontario. It is 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern for us. Junaid, where are you based?
I'm in Virginia, so 6 p.m. here as well, Eastern Time.
Yes, sir. Nice. Okay, cool. So, guys, I'm really excited for this live stream, and I'm glad to see that it is working properly on Facebook because we were supposed to do this live stream a while back. And, this little bit of the end of the year and the beginning of the year, it's like all my technology is trying to work against me because my last laptop just gave out completely, my MacBook. And I learned the very difficult lesson that I'll give as a piece of advice for anyone who ever buys a Mac book or any Mac product is get Apple Care, because I
Yes.
didn't get Apple Care, and I learned the hard way that it was going to cost me almost as much as getting a new laptop just to fix my existing laptop. So I ended up buying a new one. But we are here today. We've beaten all of the obstacles that have tried to stand in our path from having this live so that we can bring this value to you here today. My guest for us is Junaid Ahmed, same last name as me, but no relation as far as we know. And he is going to be speaking to us about how to up our video content game. And we're going to talk about things to do with video. We're going to talk about his journey. We'll talk about, designing your own home studio. As you can see with his home studio right now, I don't know about what you guys think, but I think it's pretty badass. That's why I brought him on here, and you can see even all the different angles and everything. So this is a different type of live stream than what we usually do, because you guys know I usually talk about brand strategy. We talk about polarization in your content, cult building, community building, and all that type of stuff. But we never really dived into the nitty gritty on how to set up your home studio, how to really up the quality of the video that you're doing so that you can position yourself in a way where when people see your content show up on their news feed, or they're on YouTube, wherever it is, you have this instant credibility. It turns heads, it gets them to pay attention. That's the effect that Junaid's content has had on me, and that's why I brought him here to speak with you guys. So if you are excited, let me know. Drop a hashtag excited in the comments, and just like Allison Bell just did, drop a hashtag cult as well, and let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. I will come into the comments later on, probably on the replay, to interact with you guys, because here I got to stay focused on this interview, obviously.
Let's
So with that
go.
said, Junaid, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, Zaki, thank you so much for bringing me on. I'm super excited. It's awesome to see a same name back. Like we have the same last name, and it's really awesome to see others. And of course, I've got a unicorn here saying hello. My daughter, she loves saying hello. I mean, it is past 5 o'clock here, so
I'm not going
all
to sleep.
bets are off.
For sure, man, for sure. Cool. So, Junaid, this is the first time I brought you into my community to speak with my group. So I'm sure, maybe some of you guys are already familiar with Junaid, some of you watching. Probably a lot of them are not familiar with you. So for the viewers, I'd like to ask you, let me know in the comments if you are familiar with Junaid or if this is your first time. You can just drop a comment saying familiar, or you can say first time. But Junaid, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are,
Absolutely.
your backstory, what it is that you do? I know you have over 30 plus years of experience in the video production and content creation game. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that, what you do today, and how you got to doing what it is that you do now?
Absolutely, man. So I've been a huge, passionate tech enthusiast for the past 30 years. I've been behind the camera and going back to film cameras, taking photos, taking videos, and it just drove some of the passion that I've been into. Now, for the past 20 plus years, I've been designing websites, mobile apps, user experience for enterprise applications. But that was the full time job type of thing that I was doing. But parallel to that, I was still uh, s- spending time in my passion, photography, filmmaking, and it wasn't until 10 years ago that my wife got me a DSLR camera. I was like, okay, this is the one thing that is totally going to change, and it totally did because I spent about 15 sorry, I watched and consumed about 15 different courses on how to use a DSLR properly. It taught me camera basics, camera composition, camera lighting, like literally everything that's those little buttons in the back. It taught me everything. And not only that, I joined other groups around photography and filmmaking, which enabled me to utilize all of the things that I learned. And it totally, brought me where I am today. Now, fast forward about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I launched my own podcast because I wanted to document my own journey as a beekeeper. And I've been a creator, been blogging for a very long time, and I was like, hey, this podcasting is pretty cool. We tried a podcast in 2012. It lasted about 4 episodes, but then it was until 2018 when Gary Vaynerchuk was like, just document your journey, man. There's nothing to it. And of course, we're all, as creators, as entrepreneurs, as people consuming content, you always wonder, hey, what's the story? How do you tell a story? And we think that we don't have stories, but what the thing is, you got to really practice on where to find a story. So when I started documenting my journey as a beekeeper, and it really showed me what was happening. I was like, wait, I'm still not good at it. Let me start bringing guests on my podcast. So I started bringing guests on my podcast. I've interviewed over 450 guests on my podcast, Hacks and Hobbies. And I started to see the pattern. I started to see what it takes to tell a story. I started to see what the whole hoopla was all about. The hero's journey they talk about. It's in literally every movie. So it helped me transform that. Now during the pandemic, I started leveling up my space because I was in front of camera a lot more than I wanted to. And I was like, this has to change. What I was seeing was yellow walls and blue screens, and I'm like, this is not fun. And I started putting in my Hollywood experience and Hollywood uh, um, techniques that I had learned over the years into my own space. And this is what I got. Now, the reason I have multiple video camera angles is so that I can teach this to others as well. Now, and that's something that people start asking me, like, why does your camera look so good? Why does your image look so clean? Is this like a YouTube studio or is this like a Hollywood studio? So all of these things kept coming in, and I was like, you know what? Let me help you figure out what it takes. So that's a little bit of about me, how I got started, and where I come from.
For sure, man. Appreciate you sharing. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Cool. So there's a lot in there that I want to circle back to. Some of the things you mentioned on storytelling and multiple different topics. So
Hmm.
throughout this live stream, we can circle back on some of that stuff. But what I'm interested in hearing from you, and this is particularly just because of the world that I come from. So your background was very heavily in, you got that DSLR camera. You said how many years ago?
Almost 10 years ago,
10 years ago.
2013. Yeah.
Okay, so clearly, I mean, and you've been doing this type of stuff for like 30 years now. So you've been
Hmm.
very, very entrenched into the whole content creation world. Now, for me, obviously, I'm a content creator. I'm doing a live stream here. Content is a big part of what I do in
Yeah.
my business, but I really got my start, I would say, from more of a marketing angle, right? Getting
Hmm.
into direct response and all that type of stuff. And one of the things I think a lot of people in my audience can probably relate to that, because I know we have folks here in the group who lean a little bit more on the content creator side, and then we have probably more people here in my community who lean more on the marketer side, right?
Mm.
And I know one of the things that's constantly pushed in our space, which I agree with partly, but I also disagree with the way that it's pushed a lot,
Yeah.
is this idea that, like, it doesn't really matter how you look, and I understand why it's pushed, because folks are want to get people out of the door,
Right.
just creating content and doing things without holding themselves back because, oh, I don't got the best studio, I don't have the best equipment and whatnot.
Hmm.
So yes, doing content that looks not that great,
Yeah.
uh, is better than doing no content at all. But at the same time, for me, I'm very heavy on branding, and branding matters a lot to me, and the image you have with your branding. So I would always choose 100% to have top-notch graphics, to have top-notch video, and all of that
Mhm.
over having things that don't really look strong. But with that in mind, for the folks who are like, you know what, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the story. What matters is your messages. What matters
Yeah.
is like what you're saying and whether or not it converts. Forget about what you look like on video. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, here's what I preach myself is, you got to get the reps in. I can go buy a $250 Nike running shoes that are designed for athletes running 100-meter marathons and or 100-meter sprints, but I'm not going to be as good running on them right away. Why? Because I didn't put in the reps of running at all. Right. So you've got to put the reps in. So what I say, hey, we all have $1,000 camera in our pockets. Do the 30-day challenge. Learn how to use the camera. Learn how to talk to the camera. Make it your friend. Think about who it is that you talk about and what your story is, what your message is. So that's something that I want you to work on. So because even if you get a high-end top-notch studio, you're still going to have to work on yourself, because top-notch studio, just like going and buying a expensive $1 million Ferrari, is anybody can do that. Well, not anybody, but you know what I'm saying. But it doesn't mean that you know how to drive that car, and we've seen that happen. And there's a ton of fail videos where people are driving these Mustangs or Ferraris, and they're crashing them into the dividend, the middle dividers. Is because just because you bought something really nice doesn't mean that you know how to use it. And if you take an example of video games, even the first car that you get to drive when you start your mission is the most base car ever, right? So I remember back in the days it was a Civic, or and then nowadays now you could probably, I think I think Civic is still a first car that you would get in a video game. So I think that's really important to build up that experience. The number two thing that I would talk about is you want to do uh the Will Smith effect. Now, what's the Will Smith effect? Now, Will Smith has been creating content for a long time, and he has the top-notch blockbuster films, but then he's also did a lot of content from his phone, right? So you got to bring both levels of your personality. Hey, I can show up on my phone camera with bad lighting because I want to make sure that I get that message across. But then you want to also show up on a high-end studio because you care about your audience. You care about your audience so much so that you're investing in yourself. And that's what we're doing, right? We invest in ourselves. The reason we go through coaching, the reason we level up our own mindset is because we care about getting that message to our audience in um, the most chunkable ways that they can contain. So there's, again, it's a two part. You got to work on one thing to get to the next one, but you can also get to the high end. It's all I think I've said enough on that, but it also has to come down to how close is how close is building a studio to the money,
Hmm.
right? What's the ROI going to be when you build that studio? And if you haven't figured out how to convert things on your own without a studio, then you're going to be just spending money and be like, oh my god, I'm not making any money. So it then you're getting a bad rap of, oh, I spent all this money on the studio, but I can't make any money on it. Well, did you work on your own? What did you work on yourself? Right. So you have to work on ourselves to be able to tell that story, to be able to show up authentically on the space, so that you can really utilize everything that comes in that studio.
Got you for sure. Cool, awesome. So in that case, man, based on kind of the way you just laid it out, to make sure that I understood your take on it correctly,
Hmm.
essentially what you're saying is, based on where you are in your journey, like if you haven't ever created content before, then it's probably for that person it's not the best idea right now to start investing into building out a whole home studio. Whereas if you're someone who's been creating content for a while. You've gotten your message in place. You know what kind of content to create to y- reach people, to get people engaged, to get convert folks and your community and all of that. Then at that point, it's worth it to invest to take your content to the next level. Did I understand you correctly, or did I
Oh,
miss anything?
100%. That's exactly what I'm saying, and you put it really nicely.
Okay, cool. So in that case, for you yourself, because like you said, you had the professional experience, but then you also went through your own personal journey with content creation with your podcast, Hacks and Hobbies, I think you said it was called,
Yep.
and then at some point you built out your own home studio. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey with that? What got you to the place where you're like, okay, you know what? Now I know you touched on it a little bit with your story, and you mentioned
Sure,
looking
of
at
course. I
yellow
can go
walls and all
deeper
that,
into it.
but what really triggered it for you, and what did you find after building your home studio? How did that impact things for you?
It was it was around 2018. I was invited to be a speaker at a LinkedIn Live local event. So these were physical events. We uh, go meet people in person. How about that, right? Back in 2019, or was it 2018? And it was towards the end of 2018, and my friend was like, "Hey, you need to talk about video production using your smartphone." Because I was walking
Okay.
around in one of the LinkedIn Live events using my smartphone and capturing content and then sharing it with people. And he's like, "You need to teach this." So I'm like, "All right, let's." So I spoke on stage. I talk about the power of smartphone. I even have a book out on that topic now. So, mastering iPhone video production is what I talked about. And what was cool is as I'm talking and as I'm talking about the importance of creating content and getting comfortable, about a week later, I was like, I should do a course on it because courses were really hot. And I was like, hey, let me see if I can create a course around this. So I set up my basement. I set up this backdrop. Set up all the cameras. But as soon as I stepped in front of the camera, I froze. I didn't know how to start my videos. I didn't know how to start talking to the camera. Like I had no idea. So I was like, I need to work on that piece. And then uh, about 20 minutes later, my kids came like, hey, Dad, we're hungry. Can we get some food? So I was like, I'll come back tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, same thing. I'm struggling. I'm having trouble talking to the camera. And I still have to go press record on each of the cameras to make sure that I can start talking. That was kind of like, okay, that was a little hard for me to s- starting. I was like, you know what? I need to make a dedicated space. So I looked in my office and it wasn't where what I wanted to be. And of course, at that time I was still commuting for work, so I only had so much time. Now, fast forward to fast forwarded to unicorn. Fast forward to the pandemic, we all started working from home. And I was like, hey, this is the best time. You know why grass is greener on the other side? Is because they spent a lot of time watering that grass. And
Yeah.
that's what ended up it being. I was spending a ton of time in this office. I was like, hey, I can turn this around and make this my studio so that I can, go and create that content. And that's essentially what led me into building the studio out. I had I don't have any, I don't have to spend any time in fixing the tech. I just come in here, press a button, and I can start recording the content. And I have plenty of practice on what I've been doing. This is my art, daughter's artwork. I have plenty of time into practicing what I'm actually going to say on camera. Now,
Mhm.
if you've seen any television or any newscast, the people who are on camera only have one job. They have to read the teleprompter, engage with the customer, engage with the viewer, right? As entrepreneurs, we have to wear several different hats. We have to be the cameraman, we have to be the script writer, we have to be the presenter, we have to be the promoter. We have to do all of these things as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. So if you can solve some of the things, so then you can focus on the one thing that you really want to do, that's where setting up a studio comes into handy. And that's what I did for myself.
You saying that reminds me of what it makes me think of is even when you want to get into a habit of going to the gym. And like one of the things that I do, my wife and I, so we have been working on making it habitual to hit the gym every morning, which I was going from now I'm a little bit more of a morning person. I think as I get a little bit older, I'm starting to wake up earlier, but I always used to be very much a night person and I didn't like to get
Yeah.
up early, especially hitting having to do something, hit the gym or whatever. But I found for me now the morning works best because I can get that out of the way, go do my other stuff. So in order for me to make sure that I hit the gym, I have to make sure my clothes are ready, everything the night before, and just make the situation as easy as waking up, changing, and going down to our gym in our condo building and working out, right?
Yeah.
So I know for content creation, because this was a thing for me for a long time in my journey, and I think probably you guys in the comments, whether you're watching this live or the replay, let us know if you can relate to this. But I know one of the big things that holds people back is just the amount of setup, the amount of work that's required just to get content going. So definitely one of the things that really appeals to me in general about the whole idea of having your own home studio is what you just said, literally being able to click a button and just start doing the content.
Yeah, man. And I was talking to one of my guests yesterday when I was doing a recording, and I was saying this, asking him the same thing. I was telling him, hey, I wanna ride my bike more often because I used to ride my bike a lot, but now I don't anymore. And he's like, it's probably because the friction that it takes for you to get ready and get in the bike. Because I got to make sure the tires are inflated. I got to make sure my gear is also ready. Where's my shoes? Where's my helmet? Where's my hat? All those things have to be in the same place. And you gave a perfect example. You got your clothes ready. You got your shoes ready. You can put them on, and you can 20 seconds to get to that point. I think the thing that he was mentioning was he wants to learn the guitar. So what he does, he leaves the guitar in the family room, so within 20 seconds, he can grab the guitar and start playing and start practicing because we're reducing friction. And that's why so many apps are so popular is because they reduce the friction to get to the dopamine hit, when using that app. So I think it applies to literally everything: content creation, working out, having coffee, having, all of those things. It makes a lot of sense.
For sure, man. Cool. So I got another question for you that goes now back to the whole home studio design thing, right? So I know you have the multiple camera setups. Do you mind just panning around? I just want to let everyone get a good
Absolutely.
look at your studio. One of the things that I love about your studio, and I love when I see this in general with content creator studios, a lot of YouTubers and also streamers are good at this, but I can see like glimpses of your personality there. Like I see
Hmm.
the Marvel thing in the
The
background,
Marvel thing, right?
and you have like your own it's uniquely Junaid, right? When if
Yeah.
you weren't sitting there, I can look at it and I know that this is Junaid's home studio.
Yeah.
So I know one of the big mistakes. I don't know if this is something you run into with clients or with people who contact you for help,
Hmm.
where they ask, "Hey, how can I make my studio look just like yours?" I know I run into that when
Yeah.
people are looking at my brand and they're like, "Hey, Zeki, I like your whole vibe that you have with the secret society feeling going on,"
Hmm.
and then they just want to emulate that, which I
Yeah.
always tell people is the worst thing to do because you need your own brand should not look like my brand. It should not look like Alex Hermosi. It shouldn't look like
Sure.
Gary Vaynerchuk. It needs to be you, right?
Absolutely.
At least you want some
Absolutely.
attention. What do you call it? So, my question for you, number one, do you run into this with people? But more importantly, I'm assuming when you work with your clients, you're aiming to make their studios uniquely them and reflect their own brand, reflect their personality. So, how exactly do you approach that? How do you, what's like the step by step or the thinking behind how you actually go through it when it comes to planning out your own home studio?
Absolutely. So the first thing that we do is figure out the gear that's going to go in the studio. Well, before we even figure out the gear in the studio, we want to make sure that we analyze the space. So the first thing that I like to do is we do a room analysis, understand where the windows are, what are the doors in the room, do you have any space for bookshelf, like looking at the entire room and how we can utilize it to max. And also we want to make sure that we're maximizing feng shui in the room as well. So taking those two into effect, then we look at, okay, what kind of setup do you want to have in there? Do you want multiple cameras? Are you going to be sitting in uh, along with other people in the room? Hey, we got Marcello saying hello. Um, we got to look at all of those things and make sure that it's in line with the with who they are. So once we've got that, now the reason like why people want to emulate you or emulate me is because that's what we're taught to do, right? When I have smaller kids, my daughter, she's in kindergarten now, and she's writing alphabets. She's copying alphabets from the alphabet because that's how we learn. You copy and you learn from that. So my 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 two older sons, my younger son, my older son's always complaining, why are you always copying me, why are you always copying me, right? They want the same toys, we don't want the same thing. So when people watch us and they get to see us, they say, hey, I want to emulate what you're getting. Now you want to start with that emulation, but then you bring in your own personality, and that's where we can help them figure out, hey, what's your personality? What are the things that that you like that are gonna go in that space, and really build that out. Excuse me, Tanya.
No.
I'm gonna have to kick you out from the studio now.
No. No.
Cool, man. So in terms of let's circle a little bit now to video quality, because obviously like home studio setup is not something that we could just do. I know you have like a whole 5-day challenge and then you have a whole program people go through.
Mhm.
It's really very much a personalized thing, so we can't just give people cookie cutter stuff for that. But what I am interested in hearing, because obviously I mean we can see right now looking at your camera, you have phenomenal quality. I mean down to the lighting, everything is I mean, it stands out. Every time I see you in my newsfeed, it grabs my attention. It stands out to me. So when it comes to video, obviously audio is important. Um, lighting is important. I know that you have certain equipment you use. For someone who's just getting started, they don't yet have their home studio. They're not really tech. Like I'm not super tech when it comes to this camera stuff. I recently got a DSLR and I haven't even started streaming with it because there's like so many features for me to figure out.
Sure.
I,
Mhm.
I just started looking into it lately to switch over.
Yeah.
But for someone like me who isn't like super, super, super tech savvy, but can get to understand things,
Mhm.
when it comes to really upping your video quality and getting it as close as possible to what we have in front of you with you, what would be the key top priority pieces of advice? Like how would you rank things in terms of audio versus lighting versus the camera equipment itself and so on?
So the first thing I say is get a good microphone. The one that you're using, the one that I'm using, are perfect. They are designed for podcasters. They're designed for speaking. They're the best device for anybody, because if people cannot hear you, it doesn't matter. One of the things that people saw, that there's research that if your sound quality is high end, people think that you're smarter 30% time
Mm.
more than if they were listening to, like, they did research where the same speaker was saying, and then the audio quality was bad on one of them and the good on the other one, and they thought the other guy was 30% smarter. The next thing is you want to focus on um, lighting, right? So you got the microphone, you want to focus on lighting, because if you get the lighting right, any camera will make you look good, because they have the same physics. They have the same basic items that are in the camera. You got the lens, you have a sensor, and if you have good lighting, you're gonna look good. And the funny thing is, we all carry these $1,000 cameras, and with the latest iOS 17 and Mac OS, you can literally use your iPhone as a camera with your computers. So you got audio, you got lighting, and you got a really good camera. Now, if you do want to level up to the next stage, that's when you bring in the DSLR or mirrorless camera into the space, and that basically, like, my hands are blurry because they're out of focus. So that's what happens when you bring in a high-end camera, because you have a much larger lens, you have a much larger sensor. So it's all physics, when it comes together.
Cool. And so when it comes to obviously audio,
Okay, can
I
you go
I
over
can
there?
say from experience, it's not super hard to figure out in the sense of if you get a good mic like this Shure M7, which I think you said is the same mic that you have. I don't remember how much it costed me. It wasn't
It's
crazy
about
expensive.
$230 to $250, depending on if you hit a
There,
sale.
there you go. So it's not super expensive. So
Mhm.
this mic is crisp and it's good. Now, when it comes to lighting, I'll admit myself, like I don't really know anything about lighting. I got a couple of ring lights on the side here.
Mhm.
Um, how complex is the lighting setup, would you say? And is there any like instant advice that's like, let's say the 80/20 when it comes to lighting that someone can, after they watch this video, go and apply, even if they're shooting their content on like an iPhone or whatever?
Yep. So recently, I don't know if you got to see the Scary Fast event Apple put together I think it was like October 30th. That entire event was shot on an iPhone 15. I saw some behind the scene footage, and they were using lights that cost $130,000. $130,000 is what they spent on lighting, but to use the camera as an iPhone. Now, they have a lot of budget, so they were able to do that. But what they wanted to show is that showcase the low light feature of the camera, and they wanted to, showcase that you can capture really high quality content if you have the lighting just right. So now in my space, I'm going to turn off all the lights so that you can see what I've got going on. So I paint with light, right? So I'm starting the light that you see right now is from my big monitor. I'll switch the camera. You can see this is what's lighting my face right now. So I start with a key light. So if you have a good key light, that's going to make sure that you are seen clearly. Now I'm looking a lot like you because we have, these are the main lights that people go with. So even if it's a ring light or if you have a flat panel light, this is the look that you're going to get. Now I always recommend a flat panel light because it's a much larger frame and it's a much softer light, so it doesn't show up crazy. The next thing that I did was like, let
Could I
me
just
add a.
interrupt you for one
Oh,
moment?
please, please, please.
For your key light, where do you have that positioned in
Right in front
comparison
of
to
me, up
yourself?
in front of me. So let
Okay.
me switch the camera angle. It's right up there.
Okay.
And actually, let's do this. So this is my key light. I'll turn it on again in front of me. And then, I just have the overhead lights on so you could see everything else. Switch back. So now really blown away because I have my settings dialed into my camera for the correct lighting. Then I add a fill light, which then fills in the rest of the room. And, you could see a lot more of me. And then I added the hair light, which then separates me from the background. And you can see my shoulders, you can see my hair. I mean, I was talking to somebody and he was like, I'm bald, so why do I need a hair light? It's gonna add your shoulder lights. And then what I did is I added some lights in my shelf back there uh, to then further separate. So I have 5 different lights that are set up to show you the look that I've got going on.
I got you. And how much would you say a setup like this costs?
Um, just for lighting setup alone, I think you can get it done for easily $300, 300
Oh
to five
wow.
hundred dollars. Yeah.
I was expecting to hear a couple grand, man.
No, man, I'm telling you, I am, we're all frugal. We want to make sure that we make our money go as far as we can. And like the lights and the gear that I've got going on in my room, I've had it for 3, 4 years, right? Some of the lights I bought like 6 years ago, and I'm like, hey, I can use this for here. And of course, you want to make sure you have the right modifiers. So what do I mean by modifiers? So these lights have, you'll notice there's some kind of cross hatch going on in front of the light. So this is called an egg crate. So what it does, it makes sure that its light goes directly on you, and then it's not spilling over into the spaces that you don't want it to.
Got you. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate that breakdown. It was very visual too. So that's definitely super helpful.
Absolutely.
So for those of you who are watching, whether you're live or on the replay, I will scroll through the chat in a bit to see if you're asking any questions. But I do want to invite you guys. We're 35 minutes in. So far, it's only been my questions that I've been throwing at Junaid. So any questions that you guys have, I'd love for you to drop them in the comments. Let's take advantage of the fact that we've got someone here with 30 years plus of experience on this stuff. all of you here who are in my community are either content creators or you should be creating content because you're building a business online and you follow me for that stuff. So if you're not creating content, then I don't know why you're not creating content already. So all of you should fall under the category of content creators. So any questions at all that you have for Junaid, please do drop them in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can while we're still live here. Again, if you're watching this live or on the replay, make sure to smash that heart reaction so we can show some love on here. I've been locked out of Facebook for the past couple days, so I don't know if Facebook's going to suppress my reach a little bit. So let's give it some love and let it get to more people here in the community. And make sure to drop a comment with hashtag cult. Let us know where you're tuning in from in the world and what time it is for you. So, all right, cool, man. So you gave us kind of an idea of the lighting. We talked about audio. You said audio is really as simple as getting a good mic, at least from what I understand. But when I look at your room, I do see soundproofing. I see you got some
Yes.
foam on the walls. So is there anything else you would mention as far as audio and what we should look out for to make sure we have that crisp, good quality audio?
Yeah, so for audio, I want to make sure. So this microphone is a dynamic microphone, which what that simply means is that the farther away you are from the microphone, the less you can hear, the less the microphone will hear. So it's designed to be you to be close to the microphone, which means that you might not hear people in the other room, but sometimes if that's too loud, they might hear you. So the reason I have soundproofing or sound absorption in the room is so that I can avoid all of the bounces and echoes into the room coming into the mic coming back. So it helps me. So that's the other thing that I talk about in treating your room is make sure that you don't have flat surfaces in your room, and that's why I have all of these posters in this wall, which is made of um, vinyl flooring on my wall. So it was creating some kind of echo. So I was like, you know what? I need to put some posters. I need to put some memorabilia on here. And it helped with cutting down the sound. The number two, um, make sure that you have a carpeting in your floor or some kind of rug. That's also going to absorb the sound and not bounce back to you. So good microphone, room treatment, and you're good to go with audio. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but if you're back in the days when you started a podcast, they would say, hey, just record your podcast in a closet because a closet has a ton of clothing, had probably have a carpet in there, and it's going to absorb all that sound that's not being captured by the microphone and not coming back to it. So make sure that you have some kind of audio treatment going on, and a good microphone does that job. I did see Allison Bell ask a question. Kind of, she was mentioning that she has a hard time using her ring light because she always sees the reflection of that ring on her glasses. And one of the reasons why ring lights they were promoted, really well because the effect that it gives you in your eye, and they're really designed for close photography. Now, uh, what happened is everybody's been promoting ring lights, but they don't have that much of a they don't what's the word? Their light doesn't go as far as you want it to. Right? When you have a flat panel light, the lighting can go a lot farther, and you don't have to have the light close to you to make sure that you're seen. And then that reflection then goes away as well.
I see. Yeah, that's actually something I run into. If you look close enough to my
Yeah, I
glasses,
see.
you can see the ring lights in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For sure. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Cool.
Of course.
So I do see someone else asked in the comments. I was gonna get to this question because I'm curious about it too. So we mentioned a little bit of the price of the mic. It was like $230-ish dollars.
Mm-hmm.
The lighting setup you said you can get done for as much as 300. So if someone's looking, one of the things I heard you say on one of your videos, because I was watching some of your other content interviews you've
Mm-hmm.
done with others and so on, is I know you have this concept of like, you should have in your mind what your ideal studio looks like, but that doesn't have to happen in a single day, right?
Right.
So for those who are watching it, for your studio right now, the way you have it signed up, something like that, what are we looking at financially? And then on the flip, now that's one part of the question. The second part of the question though is starting out
Mm-hmm.
with the bare minimums to get really stellar video quality, but
Yeah.
let's say using your phone and just having the right lighting and audio, what would you say should be someone's starting budget? And when they want to get to eventually like what you've got, what would that end up costing them probably?
Great question. I would say to get to the level like multiple cameras, you're looking anywhere from 15 to 20K in gear and setting it all up, making sure that everything is good. And that all of that is just gear cost, right? So now you're spending the time to set it all up. For something to get started with, so I mentioned, get a good lighting, get a good microphone, and start creating content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my phone camera, and I have the iPhone 13, so it's a pretty old one, but I'm just going to switch my camera here, and we have a cool feature. This is the feature that I was mentioning that we have in um, on our MacBooks is I can switch the camera to
Oh,
the iPhone
nice.
camera. So this is my iPhone camera footage, right? I can reposition it kind of like here so that you can see me. Now, because it's using the wide angle camera, you'll see a lot more of the room, and you can see the lighting, and everything is. I have the same lighting and just switch the camera to this one, and you can see the quality and how it changed. So again, it all comes down to, hey, if I have the lighting done right, I can use any camera to start creating content. Now, what this does is I'm out the door, I'm creating content, and I don't have any more excuses, right? We want to get out of that excuse because once you start creating content, once you get that reps in, you're like, okay, I'm ready to upgrade. It's like when you start driving a car, what do you get? You get a beater that your dad left, or you get a car that's been in the family as the first car. So your first camera or first studio setup should be something that you already have in your pocket. And what's beautiful is that for the past 3-4 years, TikTok has been training content creators to create content on their phones, right? They've been training, and now they have TikTok Shop, which is one of the largest e-commerce platforms to exist now because they were able to train those people. Now those people are creating content. They're making money off of it through TikTok, through Facebook, through Amazon, through Instagram, all because they're now content creators. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Is that good? All right.
Cool. Awesome, man. So I do see, by the way, for those of you who are dropping comments, I do see there's some more questions. So we will definitely be circling back to some of those questions. I just wanted to ask something before I forget about it. Because right in the beginning of this video, when you were giving kind of your intro, you also talked a lot about storytelling, which I know isn't about video quality tech or anything, but
Mhm.
obviously upping the quality of your video is one side of it, but the other side is actually having good content and knowing how to create good content and
Yeah.
understanding how to keep people engaged in your content and consuming it. And I know for you, storytelling is a huge thing. You've been telling stories throughout, even answering my questions and all of that. And you mentioned some resources, how you learned before. So because storytelling is huge, obviously for
Hmm.
content creation, can you tell us when you think about storytelling and when you think about creating content, what do you have a certain framework how you approach it, and do you have also any resources for those who feel like they need to build that skill?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm super excited to answer that question because um, when when um, when I started creating content, I was like, I don't have a story, and so I would just ask questions, and you'll see my Facebook has a ton of questions that I ask just to get an idea of who's listening, who's watching, and what their mindset is. But for me to get into storytelling, I read a ton of books. I read at least 2-3 books a month just to understand, and how are people thinking, what are they going through, what kind of stories are they telling. And the thing is, we all have stories, we all have an experience that we've gone through. We all went to college, we went to school, we all have been done, what we've all done a ton of living in this world, and we all have stories, right? So to bring those stories and how do those stories then relate to where you are today is where it really makes sense because now you're being relational. So there's a really powerful book called Story Worthy, and this gentleman there talks about this is how you find stories in your own life. Spend a few minutes at the end of the day and think about all the different things that you did. Where are the stories there? Because stories are literally 5 minutes. A story takes 5 minutes. And he gives example of Jurassic Park and what the baseline story was in there was about that guy wanting to connect with these kids because he didn't have a way to connect with them. But now at the end of the movie, he's able to make that connection. So stories are
Mhm.
really short. And once you figure out what that story is for you, you're not able to expand on it. Now, some of the resources, again, books are really great. Podcasts is really great. If you listen to podcasts, there's a ton of reels people are dropping. There's a ton of, short stories in those reels as well. But we are we are living in an era where we have the most powerful tools at our fingertips. And you probably heard of ChatGPT, and who hasn't, right? You can literally go on there, talk about who you are, what your background is, give it all information, answer kind of like 20 questions, and then say, hey, create a little script for me that I can start practicing my storytelling ability. And then you just practice that verbatim one after the other, and boom, you've got a story, and make it relevant to people who are listening. Because I'm a dad of 4 kids. You know, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, in the U.S., living in California, living in Virginia. Who's going to relate to that? Well, there are a ton of people that look up to me. They're like, "Oh my God, how are you doing this? I'm doing the same thing, but why isn't that?" So stories are literally, we all have them, and you just got to work at it to get your story out right. Like even now I'm like struggling, but you might not see that I'm struggling because you might think that, hey, that maybe that's his talking style. But over time it just gets better and better. Just gets better and better.
For sure. And I'll say from personal experience too, I know when I started my business years ago, I thought I didn't have a story to share
Mhm.
either. But then I sat down and forced myself to actually think about my life, start hashing out the story, start sharing it, and you
Amen.
realize everybody, just like you said, everyone has a story because we literally live in stories. What happened to you today is a story. What happened to you over the past year is a story. What
Mhm.
happened to you over the past 5 minutes, that's a story. So you all have stories, 100%, man. I agree with that. Um, Another random question before I jump back into the questions that folks are leaving in the
Mhm.
comments. I'm just curious. We're on a live stream right now. I know you've done a lot of live streaming, you've done podcasting and all that type of stuff. Some people get really nervous when they're getting in front of camera, and especially if
Mhm.
they're doing it live. Some people, that's not something they really deal with. I'm curious for you if you get nervous in front of camera, especially when it comes to live, or if you ever did, and if so, if it's something you dealt with. How'd you overcome that, or how do you overcome if it's something that still exists till today?
I'm still afraid of the camera. I'm still not comfortable 100%, right? There's still that thing of, oh my God, I gotta fix this collar, so I'll fix my collar here and there, right? Because I see myself. But the one thing that you want to do is, again, practice. So what I did is, I was not comfortable in front of the camera. I was like, okay, let me just focus on the message, focus on what question am I answering, and just be yourself in answering the question. Now, the reason why it's easy for speakers to give a big speech in front of an audience is because they can't see their face. They only see other people's faces, right? You're just focusing on outward. We are outward focusing people. But now that we're looking at a camera and we're looking at ourselves, essentially, it becomes harder because you start picking on what you need to fix. In fact, it's so bad that in 2020 there were more plastic surgeries happen in the world than the past decade, because
Wow.
so much more people were in front of camera and they could see themselves. Oh my God, I look so bad. I need to go get a Botox. I need to, get laser something done. So again, it is hard, and so what I do is I pick a person that I'm talking to, and I pick an answer that I'm gonna give them,
Mm.
and then I just give that message on video. Now, working on scripts also helps. Come up with a script, come up with a bullet line of what you're gonna say. That also helps. And of course, Heather's saying she uses filters because that's also going to help with what you appear. I mean, there's a ton of filters, and we're living in an era where there's a lot of. So initially, I was really afraid of camera. In fact, every time I looked at myself in the mirror or in the camera, I'd start laughing like I don't know how to act. I thought it was funny, but over time, you like, again, like the more you do it, the better it's gonna get.
Makes sense. Alrighty, so let's jump back into some of these comments. We're almost an hour in, so I will cap it soon, just so that the video doesn't go too crazy long for
Of
those who
course.
watch it on the replay. But we can get a couple more questions in. So let's scroll through here. I see Iad who's tuning in and said, "How about if you have so many stories, where do you start? How do you pick what stories to start with?"
That's a great question, Iyad, and thanks for tuning in. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him for some time. Yeah. So where do you start with the story? We'll start with the story of today. What's something that you solved today that helped somebody come out of something? That's a story that's going to not only is it relatable, it's right there in your mind. And when people that you helped see it, I'm like, oh my God, that was such an awesome experience talking to Iyad. He helped me with this problem, and boom, that's a story done. Because what we want when you tell stories, you want that feedback, and that feedback feeds the oxytocin in our brain. Then we get the hit, like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want more of this. So now you're getting positive feedback. You're building up that confidence, and you're now go to the day before. Like, okay, what happened yesterday? So you want to think of those things and how you're solving these problems and how that's going to make um, your life and the life of people who are listening to you better. So again, pick the stories that are relatable, and boom, there you are.
For sure, for sure. And one thing I'll just throw in 2 cents. This isn't an answer to the question, but I'm just gonna say something that has helped me a lot in my
Thanks.
content creation journey. Hopefully, it helps you guys watching who are more at a beginner stage. But early on, a couple of years ago, one of the things that really held me back was the fact that I didn't think I was a good storyteller.
Hmm.
I thought I didn't have good stories, and I thought I wasn't a good storyteller also. And then I'm not gonna say who, because they'll probably kill me if they hear it, but there was a content creator I was watching,
Mm.
and she was very uncharismatic on camera, but she built a huge audience. People were tuning in and they were listening to her, and I thought that her delivery wasn't that exciting. She had good stuff to share, but her delivery wasn't very exciting. Her storytelling could use work. Interestingly enough, though, I'm very thankful that she pushed herself to do the content, and I saw that because it made me have this realization where I was like, "You know what? If she is okay sucking at the content, then I should be okay sucking at it too, and then eventually that's
Yeah.
how I'll get good." So then I just started doing it, and I just in my mind, I always reminded myself that you have to suck at something before you get
Hmm.
good at it. So, especially with storytelling, because I know a lot of people have had this conversation with people all the time that they feel like they're not good storytellers. Either they don't have stories to tell or they don't feel like they're good storytellers. Be okay with sucking at it, because
Amen.
you'll inevitably get better. The more you do content, the more comfortable you get with it. The more you tell stories, the more comfortable you get with it. It's just a natural progression of how things work.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you use the word suck, because the first three letters of the word success is suck.
Nice. That is true. That is true.
Hmm. Hmm.
Cool. All right, so I see we got a few more questions. Someone, I don't see your name, but it says Facebook user, said, "What are you using to stream?" So I'm assuming you're asking about this stream right now. I'm using Restream, but that does. I actually did want to throw this question at you, Junaid. You showed us the equipment that you use.
Hmm.
I'm curious, both for live streaming, but also like recorded content that you do. What does your software setup
Hmm.
look like?
Absolutely. So I've used Ecamm Live a lot for my content creation, especially if I'm doing a multi-camera setup. But especially if I'm live streaming and I want to be able to, pull content up on my screen. But when I'm creating just straight up content for my courses or for some videos that I'm shooting, I'll use the built-in feature inside my switcher over here. So it's called a A10 Mini Extreme. It brings in 4 or 5 different cameras in together, and I record everything directly onto an external hard drive, so that I have the highest quality video possible, and then I can bring in all of the footage together and cut between the different shots and pick the right ones. And then that also helps me avoid jump cuts, because jump cuts are fun because, and they got popularized because everybody just had a single camera. If you have multiple cameras, you can cut from one camera to the other camera without having to say, oh, he made a mistake,
I
kind
got
of
you.
thing.
I see what you're saying. It's kind of like a more natural
Yeah.
transition. Makes sense. Cool. All right. So I'm just looking through the comments, scrolling through to see if we have any more last questions that we'll take before we wrap this up. But
Yeah.
while I'm looking for those questions, Junaid, I know you have offers, you have programs available for people
Hmm.
who want to really take their content game to the next level, and especially for their home studios. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you've got available for people, where they can learn more from you to put this stuff into practice?
Absolutely. So I have my website, homestudiomastery.com, where you can learn all about what I do, what I offer. I have a 4 point consultation that I do for people to tell them, hey, you can work on this, and figure this out. Then I also have uh, doing a 5 day challenge coming up in January, on January 15th, where I walk through every single thing that you need to think about to set up your studio, from room analysis to cameras to lights to studio design, and all the way to picking the right camera for your setup.
Cool. And you said that that challenge is starting when?
It's on January 15th.
January 15th. All right. So anybody who's tuning in, we're streaming to a couple different places on my platform. Junaid has this streaming on some of his platforms too. If you're interested in joining that challenge so you can, learn more from Junaid and put some of the stuff into practice to get your home studio game to the next level, drop a comment and you can say hashtag challenge. And what I'll do is I'll grab the link from Junaid after this session is over, and I'll reply back to your comments. Or if you're on Junaid's platform, he'll be able to reply to your comments. And then that way you guys can get signed up for it before it goes live. With that said, Junaid, where is the best place also for people to follow you personally? Because I know you are on a few platforms.
Yeah, so just look up Super Junaid on literally any platform, and you'll find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and like literally any platform. Just look for Super Junaid, and you can connect with me.
Cool beans. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, I just looked through the comments and I think we got through all the questions. I didn't find any more. If
Awesome.
I did not answer your question, you can comment again and let me know, and maybe on the replay we'll see if one of us see your question. With that said, for those of you who did stick all the way to the end, I would love to know who's all here, so drop a hashtag still here in the comments. Let, if you haven't already done it, smash the heart reaction or the like button or whatever it is, depending on which platform you're watching this on, so other people can benefit from this content as well. And for those of you who dropped a comment saying hashtag challenge, I will get that link to you as soon as possible so you can join Junaid's upcoming challenge. With that said, Junaid, I really appreciate you hanging out with us. I know your kids are waiting to get some attention from daddy, so we will let you go back to your family. But thanks so much for spending the night with us, man.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it, and I always love hanging out with my creator fellows, answering questions, because we got to build that relationship. We got to build that mindset, and keep helping the folks that are around to say, hey, it's easy, it's fun up here. Come join us, create content.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. It was awesome hanging out. I'll catch you guys in the next live stream. We're doing this every single week, generally speaking. Sometimes something comes up and we don't do it one week, but every week right now, for now, inside of our Facebook group. at Thursdays, 6 o'clock p.m. Now, for those of you who have been paying attention to my posts since I got my Facebook account back, which was just this morning, I am actually moving my community off of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has officially pissed Zeki off and got into his last nerve. So I'm going to be migrating our entire community off of Facebook, but that'll probably take a little bit of time to do. So I will update you guys very soon. Pay attention to the content inside of the group so you know where we're going to be moving to. And our live streams will probably at that point be moving to YouTube. We'll see what we do on the live stream front. But with that said, I appreciate you coming through, man, and I appreciate everybody here who tuned in. Make sure to drop that comment again, hashtag still here, and I'll catch you guys